Hi everyone, I'm Martijn. I'm a student at Sint Antwerp and a freelance graphic designer on the side, mainly interested in branding, typography and editorial design. What I want to talk about today is sans-serif, which is a piece of graphic design research I've done recently. It's an article by Thierry Brunfaut of Base Design on the branding/blending controversy in the high fashion industry. As you might have noticed, over the last few years, the top players in high fashion have all been rebranding. Now, the problem with this is they're all converging into the same word marks. And look at brands like Burberry, Balenciaga, and Balmain. All of them have been shifting from very expressive, unique logotypes to all capital sans-serif ones. This is where the controversy begins, as Thierry emphasizes the goal of branding is to differentiate one brand from another. In this plea, he calls this recent phenomenon blending, which means every brand starts to look the same. So reading this article made me think about the role of branding in fashion, especially logos in luxury clothes. I think it's strange to observe a designer with this much experience in the field considering a logotype to be an irrefutable and necessary asset in all things brandable. I feel like we should also be talking about the role a logo might play in the constraint of creativity in an industry where mere marks are starting to represent value, quality and style more so than the clothes themselves. More and more of what you see nowadays from these big maisons like Balenciaga and Balmain are nothing more than blank t-shirts, but as soon as you slap on a big logotype from Balenciaga and Balmain, all of a sudden they're like priced at £300 and people are okay with it. What I wanted to explore in this research is what the fashion industry might look like without the contaminating cancer branding currently exercises therein. What if instead of diverging again like Thierry proposes, the fashion industry converges, getting rid of branding in the form of logo as a whole, making the designer focus more on the cuts and the silhouettes and the stitching, the graphic design on the garments themselves, rather than the idea of luxury you get from a well-considered mark. I wanted to extend these converging lines up to their intersection point, so crafting the most neutral typeface for the whole of fashion to use as a community.
So the way I did this was by taking 8 of the recently rebranded fashion logotypes, Saint Laurent, Diane Von Furstenberg, Balmain, Berluti, Burberry, Balenciaga, Calvin Klein and Celine, and I paired them up, groups of 2, so these were kind of Helvetica-esque, the others I had no idea, so I just paired them up based on the features they had. What I did then was taking the average from each pair and then taking the average again, so did the same thing on this side. What I ended up with was an all-encompassing or like an embodiment of the other, of every logotype I started with. So what I had to do for this variable typeface to work was match up every node in every letter and making sure every letter had the same amount of nodes. So, for example, the A, the A was pretty simple because most A's look alike, even though for this one, for example, because of Berluti's typeface, I don't know why, but Berluti, if you look at the logo type, it has a bunch of different cuts and weird corners, and these stems were never straight. So this meant if for example, the R, because of the stem wasn't straight here, I had to encompass that in every typeface. I had to put an extra node there just because Berluti didn't have the straight R, and for example this cut, which meant I had to overlap 2 nodes here as well, and yeah, again, Berluti was kind of a bottleneck in the whole process just because of their weird cuts. And another thing was, for example, the R's. This is Helvetica Neue, which it ends in a point. Helvetica, regular Helvetica ends in a kind of a blocky shape like this. So this one had two nodes on top of each other as well. Then there wasn't like, it wasn't always curved. For example, the Berluti or the Balmain typefaces had straight legs. So it was kind of taking every letter and making sure the same amount of nodes were applied at the right places. If you look at, for example, the G, Helvetica has a very structured spur like this. Helvetica Neue as well. Berluti too. But then Burberry, for example, it just ends in a point. So that meant I had to take 3 nodes and put them on top of each other just to make sure the amount of nodes was the same. Same thing for, well, Celine and Calvin Klein just didn't have spurs at all. So these had like what, 5 different spurs, nodes on top of each other.
And at this point, I had a perfectly functional variable typeface that scrolled through the different logotypes, which in and of itself was pretty cool. What I wanted to do was create a neutral typeface too.
So what I could do then was, for example, take the Diane Von Furstenberg, which had a weight of 100, then the Saint Laurent had 200. If I could then go to an instance and in an instance, for example, at 150, what I had then was a weight that was in between those two typefaces. So that was actually the average of the of those two. Another example, if I took Balmain, weight 400, and then Burberry, weight 500. If I took an instance for 450, it was in between those two as well. So by averaging every typeface this way, I could then make like a big average. Again, absence. So as you can see in the final typeface itself, the absence one, you can also see every kind of feature of every typeface. For example, the Berluti one, you can see the rounded corner is still here, just a little smaller, just because the other typefaces didn't have the same round corner. Again, because of the Berluti typeface, there's some quirks to the entire typeface. Not every stem is perfectly straight, and there is some cuts, and some letters look kind of weird, like this C. Just it isn't perfectly horizontal like Helvetica, but it isn't very slanted either. But still, looking at the typeface, it still looks very, like it still looks like a legit typeface, I think. Even though it's only all capital and not really that worked at, like the glyph set is basic, pretty basic and stuff. And then at the end, what I wanted to do was make a big manifesto, kind of explaining everything I thought, or what I thought would be the way to go forward. And at first I was like, yeah, I have to make it in a very manifesto-esque form, making, well, writing the whole thing in the cap sans typeface as well. But then I was like, well, the typeface is meant for fashion and to be made, or to be used on the clothes themselves. I don't have to use it in the manifesto itself. So this was the first kind of exploration for the cover, for example, and the way of structuring everything in the manifesto itself. Again, this was still very much with the sans cap typeface in mind. So then this is the second version of the manifesto, in which I stopped using the typeface itself for the whole of the text, just because it was really hard to read, just because it's all like capital only and kind of screamed at you, which wasn't really wasn't what I was trying to do. So I took another typeface, which is called Malabar, I think. Yeah, Malabar. And then wrote everything I just talked about. I wrote in this small manifesto, again using these same illustrations. So these are some of the rules I wrote for the manifesto. So guide to an industry without branding. One of the rules is, for example, every luxury fashion house shall use a unanimously accepted typeface for every application of their name on all assets they have at their disposal. For this exercise, I propose this typeface to be sans, a capital-only sans-serif typeface generated out of 8 of high fashion's new logotypes. By doing this, we extend the converging lines in time, effectively reaching a point of symbiosis these houses have been longing to reach since their founding. Name fees will be restrained, for they are forbidden to serve as a landmark on a garment. The newly established universal factor will promote differentiation rather than uniformity in clothing, as they will focus less on branding and more on the product itself, etc., etc. So yeah, these are all the rules I wrote for the fashion community to kind of look at and obey. And then we have the sans specimen. So everything up until now was printed on 80 grams just regular paper. And then this one was a kind of heavier, more yellow screen printed paper. So again, this is the illustration I used to kind of explain how sans came to be and how it will be used in the future. This is the mandatory quick brown fox and the specimen itself. So kind of displaying the newly designed typeface for fashion to use. Also, I tried to use the typeface on some houses, for example, a Leaks or a Cold Wall, Acne Studios. These are all brands that would have to obey the rules since they're pretty luxury fashion focused. And then the future is where when this was screen printed, this was printed digitally on nicer paper. So this is how it could look like, just regular black labels with the typeface, with the brands written in the newly formed typeface. So Helmut Lang, Balenciaga, Calvin Klein, and Raf Simons. The typeface wouldn't be used on the clothes only, would also be used on everything branding related or everything advertising or product related. So if you look at the labels that come with the garment, just to explain what it is, how much it costs, etc., it would be used. The typeface would be used on it as well. So if you look at the vêtement, it's a navy hoodie. This is how it would look like, and then for Heaven Preston, for example, as well, exactly the same way of putting down everything, every piece of information in the same way, in the same typeface. Calvin Klein and Raf Simons. And then in stores, there's like, it's easy to look at a box and think like, oh, that's Calvin Klein, just because of the way the box is shaped or the branding that's on it. I didn't want to lose that, so I made these stickers on which you can plaster everything you need to know about the product inside. So, for example, here Burberry season, spring, summer. This description: Burberry men's multicolor contrast logo graphic, intarsia cashmere sweater. Category: the size, materials, color, price, and product number. And then even a barcode. So everything you need to know, it's on this ticket, and you can just slap it on a box without having to look inside the box inside the store. So as far as ease of use in store, it would be kind of the same, just without the whole branding and logotype fiesta around it. This is how it looked like in the end. It's kind of, well, again, this is printed on 80 grams, just regular printer paper. pretty cheap. Then this is the specimen. So this was screen printed by myself. In the future was digitally printed on nice paper, kind of like a glossy paper. So yeah, that's what it looks like. You can find a digital version of this on my website as well. So if you're interested in reading it again, or you just want to look at the the typeface itself, you can do so. If you want to have the font files for it, you can just ask me at mmcreated on Instagram. I'll send you them, no problem. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
This research is of course not as easy to put in practice as it is to repudiate the entirety of the trend. Prohibiting an entire industry of using a logo to their advantage and making them use one and the same typeface, it's just a hypothetical framework. It's difficult to make it a reality, though I do believe it is a far more interesting scenario than the rather conservative proposal for fashion to reintroduce personality in their branding. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much it. If you're interested in what I did here, or you want to contact me, be sure to follow me on either Twitter or Instagram, both at mmcreated. And thanks for listening.